What's up, Swimming World, and welcome to Split Time. I'm your host, Garrett McCaffrey. We are days away from the start of the Division I Men's Swimming and Diving Championships in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the only thing better than watching the action unfold is trying to guess how it will unfold before the meet starts. To do just that, we've brought in Swimming World senior writer John Lohn, who joins us right now. John, how are you doing?
Garrett, it's good to be back with you.
It's always good to talk some swimming with you, my friend. Let's just get it started right from the top with day number one. What are some of the things that you're looking for on that Thursday edition? It's kind of a different day number one than some of the conference meets we've just seen where they do the relays on the Wednesday before. We're getting right into the individual action, right into that relay stuff. What do you like to look for on that first day here in Minneapolis coming up?
Well, I think we go right to that 200 IM. It's a personal favorite of mine, that event, and I think we're looking at a dandy there because we had Austin Staub to the mix, which I was a little bit surprised at when I saw him swimming that at Pac-10s. But you throw him in there. Kyle Whitaker's that stud freshman in Michigan. Austin Surhoff's back. I think you have some real good power right there that should make for a wonderful first day event.
And let's start right from here because this is an event that a Texas Longhorn is the defending champion in, like you said, Austin Surhoff. We don't know what Texas is going to bring to this meet. This is going to be our first indication of exactly where this team is at. I mean, they lost two Olympians in Dave Walters and Ricky Behrens, and before Big 12s and before this conference season started, I was really thinking that Texas had a great chance to repeat because they don't lose anything other than Dave and Ricky. They actually lost another diver. There are some things here and there, but with guys stepping up like DiNicenzo, you got guys like Dax Hill, Austin Surhoff coming on again in a sophomore year after such a tremendous freshman year. It just seemed like in the individual events, they wouldn't lose any points. I mean, when it comes to relays, guys like Dave and Ricky are tougher to replace, but they've kind of gotten lost in the conversation here as we saw Florida tear it up at SECs. Auburn stepping up big time, becoming a threat once again, and then the Cal and Stanford battle at Pac-10s, leading you to believe that either one of those teams has the chance to walk away with possibly the NCAA title. I mean, what do you expect from Texas on day one? And it's a complete guess at this point because we really have no idea.
It really is hard to believe that Texas, given its history, 10 NCAA titles, what Eddie Reese has done there, can fly under the radar. But that's kind of where we are, as you pointed out. Look, if you look at the individual guys, the Fegans, Scott Spann, 100, 200 breaststroke, someone who's going to score a ton of points. Like you said, Garrett, individually, they're stacked, and that's going to translate over to relays as well. Anybody who's not thinking that they have a shot to make this back-to-back and make it number 11 for that program, big-time mistake. You can't ever sleep on Texas. You mentioned that they have the diver in that situation. That's something that in years past we've seen them take advantage of. I mean, look, the one year they scored almost 100 points out of diving to beat Stanford. I think it was 5'11", 5'01", and we're talking a handful of years back here, maybe a decade or so, but that's a difference. This is a scary team, and Dax Hill, that's a guy who, and DiNicenzo, like you said, those are guys who are going to score some monster points, a lot more than what we saw out of them last year at NCs. This could be a stacked unit that's going to give Cal all it can handle.
Yeah, and DiNicenzo is going to have a great chance on that first day to show exactly what he's bringing to the table. And there's another guy who has really gotten lost in the shuffle along with the entire Texas team, and that's Jimmy Fegan. I mean, he had a sick meet last year at this meet. He had another issue going into the Nationals this past summer. He hasn't had a good taper meet since 2009. So this kid could just drop out of nowhere, and everybody's talking. We had a little conversation before we started shooting here, and everybody's talking about Vlad Morozov being able to maybe upset Nathan Adrian, but Nathan Adrian could be dealing with somebody who's been around for a while, who challenged him 2 years ago at Texas A&M, who hasn't been able to put it together at the taper meet because of whatever reason. Jimmy Fegan could walk away from here with 2 championships in the sprint event, and I don't think that it would. I mean, it would be surprising, but I don't think it would shock us based on his freshman year performance out in Texas A&M, right?
No, and Eddie Reese has said in the past that if Fegan can get a meet where some crazy sickness, illness, whatever doesn't bother him, he hasn't had a chance to really showcase in a while now what his abilities are, and he is the guy. And you referenced that conversation we had before we started the show here. He's the guy Adrian needs to worry about. Morozov has plenty of time ahead. Look, he'll be in the mix here. Jimmy Fegan is the one who can go the 18.7, the 18.8, and the 50 free. That that stellar sprint time, he's the guy they're going to have in the end of their relays to pull them to where they need to be in those all-important double-point events. Jimmy Fegan is probably the key to what Texas may be making this back-to-back.
And a lot of that isn't just the individual events that we've talked about, it's the relays. I mean, they're going to need somebody to step up for Dave Walters and Ricky Behrens, and I know Jimmy was on those relays last year, but not firing on all cylinders. Let's talk about those relays, and it's an interesting discussion because, Cal won 4 out of the 5 relays last year. If they want to win this year, they've got to repeat that because they were 4 out of 5 relays, hitting on all cylinders, if I can use that twice in one paragraph there, but they were firing on all cylinders last year, and they still came up just a little bit short. So they got to be banking on winning those relays, and it's not going to be easy at all. I mean, Auburn, with the sprint studs that they have put together this year, could be challenging them in that 200 freestyle relay to start it off. And Cal isn't even the top seed going in that 400 medley relay. It's the Florida guys. And so that's where the conversation, I think, we want to talk about, because Connor Dwyer, looking at this meet, could be the swimmer of the meet as we look forward. He was last year. Where are they going to use him in those relays? And how is that going to affect, Cal's ability to repeat with at least 4 of the 5 relays?
Well, when I did the prediction story for the magazine, I'm sitting there thinking there's no way Cal can't win all 4 of these things. And as we sit here and talk today, look, Garrett, if everything goes accordingly, I can't see Cal not winning both medleys and the 2 shorter free relays. I just think they're too stacked. You got the Gonjic on the breaststroke, like Shields swimming out of his mind, Adrian on the end of those. They're just loaded there. But you bring up the great point. You look at the 400 medley, Dwyer as a breaststroker, and he could do anything he really wants at this meet, within reason, within his arsenal, and probably be the favorite to take the thing. And like you said, he was the swimmer of the meet last year, if I remember right.
Yep.
I can't. How can he not be the swimmer of the meet again? The guy's going to go out and probably push Evander Kay's 500 free American record. Don't think he quite gets it, but 4:09, yeah, I think that's there. He's probably going to lead off their 800 free relay to give him a shot at the American record in the 200 free, which he's not swimming individually, which he's the defending champion in. This guy is something else. He's special. I think we're going to see this also translate over more and more to international ability for him. He's in a great spot down there with Greg Troy. He's a guy who's just going to be fun to watch for this entire meet. The 400 IM, that's the one that he kind of subbed in there. I mean, Kyle Whitaker, I think, is seated second. I don't think anybody can touch Dwyer.
No, Whitaker's seated second, but like 4 seconds behind him. And Whitaker's a great young swimmer. Don't get me wrong by any means. A freshman going to 4:41, 3:41 is something very impressive in that entire freshman class at Michigan. We could talk a while about them just alone, but let's keep on this Connor Dwyer conversation. I mean, he's a meet changer. I mean, he's changing the meet for everyone. Everybody wishes that they knew exactly what he was swimming before they entered. I guarantee you there would have been a couple different people thinking about that 200 freestyle if they would have known that Connor Dwyer wasn't going to be doing it. Might change somebody like Tom Shields' lineup. I don't think Tom Shields' lineup is going to be changed because he might be the only person who could rival Connor Dwyer for swimmer of the meet. It's kind of skipping ahead to day 3, but the one event that he doesn't necessarily have an advantage in, he's not going to be the favorite, is the 100 freestyle, opting for that as opposed to the 1650, which he swam at SEC's, or the 200 breaststroke, which, we talked to him on the morning swim show. He thought he could be a 153 200 breaststroker. What goes into that 100 freestyle decision?
I was very surprised when the psych sheets came out and I saw Dwyer listed in that event because, as we talked about them earlier, you have Adrian, you have Fegan, you have Marzov, you have Adam Brown. You have a stacked field with some major players in that. Meanwhile, the 200 breast, okay, it's a strong event. You got a Scott Spann in there, but I think there's a little more wiggle room. There's a little more chance of, okay, Dwyer's not going to be outside of the top 3 in the 200 breast, but let's say Adrian, Fegan, Marzov all click in that 100 free. I don't think Dwyer can beat the 3 of them, so now you're looking at a best of 4th. So you're sacrificing some points there, or at least you're putting the risk out there that some points can be sacrificed. And that really shocked me. I thought he would go 200 breast.
And I'm in the same boat as you, but when it comes to looking forward to this meet, it's so tough to predict. And even though we kind of question the decision, I don't think we in any way think we know more than Greg Troy, or we're seeing something that Greg Troy isn't, because there's obviously a reason that a guy like Greg Troy, who's won NCAA championship and he is the Olympic coach, he knows what he's doing when it comes to that decision. I just want to understand why, and I don't know that we will until after day 3 of this meet.
And we'll get a and you know what? If he goes out there and drops a 41 and change, okay, we'll know why.
Yeah. Let's talk about some more races on day number 2. When you look at Cal's schedule from Pac-10s on day number 2, I mean, if you are Brett Hawk, or if you are Eddie Reese, or if you are Skip, I mean, you got to be absolutely shaking in your boots, because they're dominant. I mean, they are absolutely dominant. You got Tom Shields, who is the top seed in the 100 backstroke, or sorry, he's not the top seed in the 100 backstroke. He's in the top 3 in the 100 backstroke. He's in the top 2 in the 100 butterfly. He's going to be up there in the points. And then you got the top 4 100 breaststrokers in the mix, not to mention the fact that they have a great shot at starting off the day with a win in that 200 medley relay. I mean, this is the day that Cal goes for the big punch. I mean, this is, I don't want to call it a haymaker, because that, brings the connotation of desperation, and that's not what it is. But this is when they kind of knock down whoever is coming after them and then try to hold on to it during day 3. Am I right?
Yeah, they have the ability to rip the heart out of the opposition on this day, and I think that's exactly where you were going with that. That if they really pop on day 2, they might be able to put a cushion between themselves. And look, last year Texas caught them on the last day, but they're so strong this year. And as you said, I mean, you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 in that 100 breast. That's 37, 16 more. 50, I mean, that's a ton. That's just a shade under 70 points. According to the psych sheet. Now, look, I wouldn't think it's going to break where they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. But the way they can pile them up, the points, is unreal on day 2. And I think a big decision this year was for Tom Shields to go 100 back, rather than that, for lack of a better phrase, insane double he tried last year with fly 200 free.
Yeah.
That was nuts last year, and he had nothing at the end of that. I think he was 16th then, right?
Yeah, and he only scored 1 point off the second event for a guy like Tom Shields. That's not utilizing an ace, and Dave Durden is well aware of that.
This is just much more manageable for him, and can be very advantageous to the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double that a lot of people have done. You've seen Albert Subaretz do it. You've seen Natalie Coughlin do it. Granted, those are elite, like Hall of Fame type swimmers, but the way that Tom Shields swam at Pac-10s makes you think that this guy could be one of the best in NCAA history when it's all said and done, based on those underwaters. Do you think he's got a chance? I think he's got a great chance in the 100 butterfly. He touched second to Austin Staub at Pac-10s. I think he's got a great chance to flip that finish at NC2As. But you think he's got a chance in that 100 backstroke?
I do, because, and this, I don't want to disrespect Rest from Indiana, but it'd be very difficult, I think, for him to replicate what he did at Big Ten championships. And I think this is an event that's somewhat open this year, that 100 back, where, as opposed, if you look at the 100 fly, well, we're probably picking our champion out of Staub and Shields, and I think that would be the case in the majority of people's minds.
Yeah. I think that 100 butterfly is the race of the meet as we look forward when it comes to having 2 guys at an elite level doing battle. I mean, is there a better race that I'm not thinking about right now than that 100 butterfly?
That's pretty good. It'll be tough to beat that. Let me throw a question at you, Garrett. Can they go under 44?
Yeah. Can he go under 44? I mean, Peter Bush came into the office the other day saying that Tom Shields was for sure going to go under 44, really? And that by the time he was a senior, he would go a 42-second 100 butterfly, and I thought that was a little bit Charlie Sheen. I said that in the McCaffrey cap, and that's exactly what I thought. I kind of just laughed at Peter, and then I kind of joked with him the next day that Damir Dragoniuk's going a 48 in the 100 breaststroke, Peter. There's no doubt about it, but I don't think a 43. No, I don't think this year. I think by his senior year, maybe. But with that double and how fast he was already at Pac-10s,
right.
I just don't think so. I mean, Austin Staub was the champion in 2009 with the suit on and went 44-1. And Shields and Staub were both 44 mids at Pac-10s. I would love to say yes, but there's most of the time I'm the person in that boat saying, oh yeah, Cesar Cielo can go a 39-second 100 freestyle. I'm that guy most of the time, but in this one I guess maybe I'm being a little too rational, and I just don't think it's possible, at least not from what we've seen so far. But I've said it about 4 times already during this show, this meet is almost impossible to predict because you have no idea who's going to do what, and the unexpected is the only thing to expect. So I say no. Do you think he's got a chance of getting in that 43-second range?
The suit made it. I mean, the suit was part of that 44-1, and I'm not trying to take away from Staub, but we've seen what the suits did and what they didn't. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in that 44-1 range, now just in the jammers, but I'm with you. 43 is 43. I don't not this year.
Tom, if you're watching, prove us wrong, please. Yeah. It's not that I don't want to see it so badly. Please prove us wrong.
Would love to see it.
Yeah, let's talk about the last relay on day number 2, that 800 freestyle relay. It's the one relay that Texas won not only last year but the year before, and I believe, Arizona won it the year before that, but it's one of those Texas relays that they've kind of had their stamp on the past few years, and Florida looks like the favorite here. My question isn't necessarily who's going to win that relay. It's more, can a team like Texas or even Florida win the meet without winning any relays?
It's an awfully hard thing to do, but when you have a team like Cal capable of winning 4 of them, and if they slip up somewhere, well then, yeah, it gives you that wiggle room of, okay, a team, because there's only one other relay, yeah, a team could win this thing without winning a relay. The question is going to be, where does Texas plug in, as you mentioned them earlier, Walters and Behrens? And Dax Hill is going to be a huge, huge part of this thing. Last year, Neil Caskey was superb on that 800 free relay. That was a monster key to that day 2 for Texas, and really gave them a boost going into day 3. So they're going to need another performance from him, like on that relay, to really make this push. This is a Texas relay, and I would say I like them to maybe be able to pull this thing off again.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be kind of tough based on the times we've seen so far. And one of the options, and I know this might be crazy talk, and again, this is part of the fun of the NC2A season, but if Cal decided to put Josh Daniels on the anchor of their 200 medley relay, they would free up both Nathan Adrian. Justin is Nathan's older brother who I swam with at UW. I don't know where that came from. Nathan Adrian and Tom Shields on the 800 freestyle relay. And that's 2 guys. Shields, who led off in a 132, is capable of a 132-131 split. And Adrian is capable of something like that, too. I don't know if he is today, but I know in his past he has been capable of that. Cal could still win the 200 medley without either of them, possibly. Is there any chance we see both of their big aces in that 800 freestyle relay?
I think there's more of a chance of it because, if I'm not mistaken, that's the route Durden went last year, isn't it? Didn't they win that 2 medley without Nathan Adrian, and they saved him for the 800 free relay? So I would think they're going to go a similar strategy this time around and go that route.
But did they do it? I think they might have had Shields still on there. So to take both of their aces out of there is my question. I mean, Graham Moore had a terrific butterfly split because they took Shields out of that 200 medley at Pac-10s, but they anchored with Adrian. Josh Daniels is the kind of guy that really comes around once a year. Everybody's questioning Daniels based on his times from Pac-10s. I don't think you have to doubt that Josh Daniels will be there by the time NC2A's rolls around this week. So it's an option. I think it's an interesting strategic move, and we'll probably know after day number 1, right?
Yeah, I think the pieces of the puzzle always at NC start to emerge during the meet. It is just, and again, we're beating a dead horse, I guess, but it might be the toughest meet to predict every year.
And the reason it's the toughest meet is because it's the most interesting meet from top to bottom. I mean, at no other meet do you look for times next to team names before you look to them next to individual names. I mean, that's why it's so tough to predict, is because we're predicting a team championship. We're not predicting who could win. I mean, we could go event by event and probably be pretty close to the top 3 in each event. But because there's that whole team title involved, it makes it so much more interesting, and I've said it a million times over the past few weeks, but it's what makes college swimming my favorite type of swimming, because it's a team sport, and that's the only format that we have, at least at this point, that it really, truly is a team sport. Let's talk about the final day. It's where Texas took over last year. It's where we saw the Florida women take over last year as well, and we're filming this before the women's meet actually takes place, but I'm going to go ahead out on a limb and say that it's the day that the women's meet was confirmed as well. It always seems to be that way on the women's side. What do you see as something that could happen on day 2 or day 3 that will keep Cal from winning their NC2A title?
That's a good question. I think they're going to have such I don't want to say commanding lead, but I think they're going to have enough of a lead where disaster needs to strike on the last day. That's how loaded I think they are for these first 2 days, but more than anything, day 2. And so I just would think they would have to have just a mess of a prelims in day 3 to not advance guys. They would, if you just look at their roster, getting those couple of 100 freestylers more, Adrian, we're not going to see DQs on this thing. I don't see Cal being able to lose this meet, and I know that's probably a stupid thing to say, because in the past there have been times when we thought other people were favorites and they've fallen apart. There was the one year Stanford had, I think, almost every point returning, maybe every point off a 500-point team that lost to Texas, and didn't happen. So we see this stuff. But I'm here sitting again saying I just don't see Cal being able to have anything happen that they can't win this thing.
Yeah. Their 200s are the only questionable part of their lineup. I think that's
right. They're not great.
What's that?
They're not great. But
yeah. Well, other than Shields in that 200 fly after setting the Pac-10 record, but this is their Achilles heel. This is the open window that other teams might have a chance to come in there and get them. Obviously, they've got some decent 200 breaststrokers, but those guys are going to need to step up big time in order to come through. And they got some okay backstrokers as well. It's just not as dominant as their 100 version of those stroke races. So, I mean, if unless you could think of any other topic, I mean, who's winning this thing? I mean, where are we going? How is it going to, you've already kind of led to Cal winning. Who's the team that if Cal doesn't win has the best chance of maybe surprising everyone else?
Well, my picks when I put the magazine article together, and you have to understand that's done. That article deadline is a lot earlier than it's been more than a month since that thing was submitted. I had Texas number 2, and as we talked about, we don't have a lot to gauge on right now in terms of what they've done. But I'll stay with that. I had Stanford in the number 3 spot, and they have the talent. I mean, they're going to score. Chad Laderette's going to score on day 3 a ton of points. The Austin Stab return for them is monstrous. There's no other way to put that, because not only does it give them 3 individual events where they should have a finalist and a guy capable of being top 3, top 4 in 3 different events, it just loads their relays up. So I think Stanford will be right in there. And you have to look at the way Florida and Auburn performed at SECs. Those are your 4-5 spots. So I'll stick with where I was there. And the team I put in the magazine article, and this is no mystery out there, USC's jump is going to be huge. I think they were 11th or 12th last year. I think I pegged them 7th for this thing. And that's what happens when you put a Marzov in, and they didn't lose a lot off of last year. Clermont Lafer is there to score a ton of points. They're going to be in good shape, too, for a top 7 or so finish with Dave Salo leading the way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think if Auburn can get in there and take one of those relay wins from Cal, they could jump a couple spots. And one other team that I don't know that they have a chance to get into that top 3, but they get into the top 5, and it's a pretty good turnaround, especially when you lose a pretty significant swimmer. And I'm talking about Michigan, and they obviously lost Tyler Clary, but man, did their freshman and sophomore class, and also their senior class, their older guys like Modwed, really step up and do something special at Big Tens. I was very impressed with the way that Mike Bottom's guys performed, and so they have a chance to kind of make a jump. And it's tough to call it a rebound year, but when you lose a guy like Clary, it is kind of a rebound year, and they've rebounded so well. So hats off to Mike Bottom for making sure that everybody kind of stayed together on that ship. So, is there anything else I'm missing here when we're looking at this NC2A meet?
Well, real quick, in reference to that Michigan team you brought up, as I'm sitting doing the preview for this, that's the one team that I thought was just going to have such a drop-off. And so when they went and did what they did at Big Tens, and after the article was in, I said, uh-oh, big mistake on my part to have them down where I had Michigan, which was actually just knocking on the door of the top 10, because I thought the loss of Clary, and I just didn't see this happening if they did Big Tens. So I'm ready for some comebacks after NCs with Michigan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, at least you're taking them like a man. That's something that even Mike Bottom can respect, Good stuff, John. I always appreciate talking swimming with you. It's a great time. So thanks for your input, and I'm sure we're going to catch up again soon.
Always enjoy catching up, Garrett.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
All right, that's John Lohn joining us, and we appreciate his opinion, and we would appreciate your opinion as well. If you guys have some thoughts, some predictions, something that you want to tell us we were dead wrong on, leave it in the comments section. That's what it's there for. It's going to do it for this week's show. I'm Garrett McCaffrey. That's your Split Time.